At the dawn of the 20th century, the world was spinning faster than ever before. New empires were rising, global trade routes were humming with activity, and a young, ambitious United States was flexing its muscles on the world stage. Steel battleships were replacing old wooden fleets, and powerful new corporations were shaping international politics. But one giant, frustrating obstacle stood in the way of true global connection. If you wanted to get a ship from the Atlantic to the Pacific, you had to go the long way around, all the way down to the treacherous southern tip of South America. This journey meant facing Cape Horn, one of the most dangerous places on the planet. Imagine violent, unpredictable winds that could tear sails to shreds, and towering waves that looked like moving mountains. The water was freezing, the currents were chaotic, and icebergs were a constant threat. For centuries, this passage was a graveyard for ships. Thousands of vessels and countless sailors were lost to its icy waters. Even for those who survived, the cost was staggering. The journey added months to a voyage, which meant spoiled cargo, exhausted crews, and massive financial losses. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a choke point on global trade, a natural barrier that dictated the flow of commerce and power. Faced with this immense challenge, world leaders and ambitious engineers started asking a radical question. What if we didn't have to go around the continent? What if we could go through it? Their eyes turned to Central America, where a narrow ribbon of land, the Isthmus of Panama, separated the two great oceans by less than 50 miles. It was a tantalizingly short distance. Whoever could build a passage through that strip of land wouldn't just be building a canal, they would be building a new future for global trade. The nation that controlled this waterway would hold one of the most powerful strategic assets on Earth. What followed was one of the most audacious, difficult, and deadly engineering projects in human history. The story of the Panama Canal is more than just a tale of steel and concrete. It's a saga of political intrigue, financial disaster, revolutionary medicine, and incredible human sacrifice. Was it a miracle of modern engineering, or was it the result of a ruthless game of geopolitical chess? To find the answer, we have to go back to the late 1800s, when the first attempt was made to tame this wild landscape. Back then, Panama wasn't an independent country. It was a remote, jungle-covered province of Colombia. The first to take on the challenge was a French visionary named Ferdinand de Lesseps. He was a global celebrity, the man who had triumphantly conquered the sands of Egypt to build the Suez Canal. He arrived in Panama brimming with confidence, believing he could simply repeat his success. He envisioned a sea-level canal, a straight shot connecting the two oceans. But Panama was a world away from the dry, flat desert of Suez. Here, instead of sand, there was dense, impenetrable jungle. Instead of a dry climate, there was a relentless rainy season that turned the ground into a sea of mud and triggered massive, deadly landslides. And unlike the flat terrain of Egypt, Panama had mountains, a rugged spine of rock called the Culebra Cut that stood directly in the path of the proposed canal. The French engineers and their army of workers fought against nature itself, but the jungle fought back with an even more terrifying weapon: disease. Mosquitoes, which no one at the time knew were the carriers, spread yellow fever and malaria with terrifying speed. Workers fell ill by the thousands. The hospitals were overflowing. The project became a nightmare. By the late 1880s, after years of struggle, the French effort had completely collapsed. Over 20,000 lives had been lost. The company went bankrupt in a massive scandal, and the dream of a canal lay buried in the mud, with rusting machinery and abandoned camps swallowed by the jungle. For years, the project seemed like a tragic monument to human arrogance. But the dream didn't die. A new player was about to enter the game: the United States. President Theodore Roosevelt saw the strategic value of the canal. For the U.S. Navy, a canal would mean being able to move its fleet between the Atlantic and Pacific in days, not months, a massive advantage in an era of growing global competition. The U.S. government tried to negotiate a treaty with Colombia to take over the project, but the Colombian Senate rejected the terms. Frustrated, Roosevelt saw another opportunity. There was a growing movement for independence within Panama. With quiet but powerful support from the United States, which sent a warship to block Colombian troops, Panamanian leaders declared independence in November 1903. The U.S. immediately recognized the new nation, and just days later, signed a treaty with Panama that gave America control over a 10-mile-wide canal zone in perpetuity. The path was now clear for the Americans to succeed where the French had failed. But the American team knew they couldn't just repeat the French plan. They learned from the earlier disaster and approached the problem with a new strategy and new technology. First, they tackled the disease. A brilliant army doctor named William Gorgas launched a massive public health campaign. He understood that mosquitoes were the enemy. His teams drained swamps, fumigated buildings, and installed screens on windows. It was a war on an almost invisible foe, and it worked. Cases of yellow fever and malaria plummeted, making it possible for the workforce to stay healthy. Next, the engineers rethought the design. Instead of the impossible sea-level canal, they designed an ingenious system of locks. Ships would be lifted up over the mountains through a series of giant water-filled chambers, sail across a massive artificial lake called Gatun Lake, and then be lowered back down to sea level on the other side. This innovative plan was a brilliant solution to the problem of Panama's mountainous terrain. Then came the sheer force of American industrial might. Steam shovels, some of which could scoop up tons of earth in a single bite, were brought in to carve through the mountains. An entire railway system was built just to haul away the excavated rock and dirt. For 10 years, from 1904 to 1914, tens of thousands of workers from all over the world toiled under the tropical sun, blasting through rock, pouring concrete, and assembling the massive steel gates of the locks. The scale of the work was unprecedented. The Culebra Cut, the pass through the mountains, was the deepest excavation ever attempted. Finally, in August 1914, the steamship SS Ancon made the first official transit through the canal. The world had been remade. A journey that once took months of perilous sailing was now reduced to about 8 to 10 hours. The impact was immediate and profound. Global trade routes were redrawn overnight. Goods could be shipped faster and cheaper than ever before, connecting markets and cultures in a way that was previously unimaginable. For Panama, the canal brought independence and a new identity, but it came at a price. The Canal Zone was essentially a slice of American territory cutting through the heart of their country. For most of the 20th century, the canal that defined Panama's existence was controlled by the United States. But over decades of negotiation and a growing sense of national pride, that began to change. In 1977, a new treaty was signed, setting a timeline for the transfer of the canal back to Panama. And on December 31st, 1999, in a moment of immense national celebration, Panama assumed full control of the waterway. Today, the Panama Canal remains one of the most critical arteries of global commerce. It has been expanded to accommodate the massive supertankers and container ships of the 21st century, and it continues to serve as the backbone of Panama's economy. The story of the canal is a powerful reminder of how human ingenuity, political ambition, and sheer determination can overcome incredible obstacles and literally reshape the surface of the earth. It stands as a monument to both engineering brilliance and the complex, often messy story of how our modern world was built. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into history interesting, please give this video a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.